Welcome to another episode of the Pocket Mastermind podcast. My guest today is a rocket scientist turned entrepreneur and author of the books Selling by Personality, Temperament and Emotional Copywriting Revealed. He's given up his time today to come and share how understanding your customer's personality temperament can make a big difference to your business success. So Tim Milligan, very warm welcome to the Pocket Mastermind podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. We were just talking that it's really early morning here, but it's around noontime for you.
Yep.
But I am really glad to be here.
Thank you for getting up extra early. I know you just said you were an early bird anyway, but thank you for rushing through your morning routine, and we'll come on to that in a bit later. So you are the first rocket scientist to come onto the Pocket Mastermind podcast. So tell us a bit more about your background. Like I said, you've gone from rocket scientist to entrepreneur, author, and kind of bit of personality temperament expert, I guess we could call you. Right. And that's quite a journey. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, my formal education is in engineering, so I'm an aeronautical engineer. And then right out of college, I got a job working in the space program in Cape Canaveral, Florida, where they launch all the rockets. Mm-hmm. And I spent a number of years launching rockets down there. And they gave me the title rocket scientist. That's actually was my title. And then from there, I moved from Florida to Colorado, which is kind of the western part of the United States, and joined a model rocket company. And then since then, I've started my own model rocket company. So I build toy rockets as my day job. And then
that's like a dream job.
It is a dream job. Yeah. I don't go to work in the morning. I go to have fun. But it is a business and you have to run it as a business. And so I was looking for a way to, better connect with customers. And I made the discovery that, personality and personality temperament gives you a unique window into the mind of a customer that allows you to persuade them a little bit easier and a little bit faster and a little bit quicker.
Interesting. So how do you define personality temperaments?
Okay, so we're going to go deep here.
Take me all the way.
Okay, so there's, I'm sure you've heard of some of the other personality systems where they usually have like 4 different personality types,
like the DISC and the
Myers-Briggs. Right. So those are the temperaments, and then Myers-Briggs breaks it down even further. And I use the Myers-Briggs, but I break it down into just 4. You have to keep it simple because if it's not simple, it's not going to be usable, and we need it to be usable for customers. So in the Myers-Briggs, there's E and I, or I'm sorry, yeah, introvert and extrovert is the first letter combination, and they call them dichotomies. It's one or the other. Mm-hmm. In reality, it's a continuum, but you can't tell somebody that's just on that borderline. So we use the dichotomy like a light switch. It's either on or off, but it could also be a dimmer switch. So somewhere in the middle. So the first one is E and I. The second letter combination is S for sensing and N for intuition. We've already used I for introverts. So we use N for intuition. Then the third dichotomy is feeling versus thinking, T or F. And then the fourth one is S, or not S, J or P. J is for judging, P is for perceiving. And so what we do is we arrange those letter combinations to come up with the 4 temperaments. And it's a little bit different from DISC in that the letter combinations, we're using only 3 of the letter combinations, or 3 of the dichotomies to come up with 4 temperaments. So the letter combinations are SJ, SP, NT, and NF. So those are the 4 temperaments. And what's unique about those 4 is that once you're in one of those temperaments, the values of that person are very similar. And that's what really enticed me to go into temperament and to personality is because in sales, that's what we want. That's what we crave, is
Hmm.
to know what the customer values. And so this allows us a shortcut to get to a customer's values. All we have to do is type that person. So if we type a person as an SP, I can go to a little lookup table and say, hey, here's the values of that person. And so when I'm trying to sell to them, I already know what they value. And so it makes it easier and faster and quicker to start the persuasion process.
So, what are the traits of those different groups?
Okay, so this is where it gets unique. I could give you the list, and I will give you some. But what makes it unique is those temperaments. This is one of my other discoveries, was that humanity is like an army. And in like the disc system, you have D's are on one planet, and the I's are on another planet, and the S's are on another planet. And so everybody's different, and it's very hard and very confusing to figure out how we all relate.
Hmm.
But what I figured out was that we're actually one big army, and we need each other to survive. So in the army, you need four types of people. You need people to go out and fight the battle, and I call these the warriors. And in the temperament, they're the SPs. So if you have an SP, I call you a warrior. In the DISC personality profile, they would call you an I.
Hmm.
But for me, using the metaphor warrior gives me a mental picture where I can rebuild the traits that I'm looking for. So what would a warrior look like? What would they value? So you start there and then you kind of rebuild, because nobody's going to remember, like 20 different traits. It's just impossible. But you reconstitute it, like, pouring water into an instant cup of coffee. And by reconstituting, you can build it on the fly. So when I'm thinking warrior, what's a warrior? What traits do they need to be successful? What do they value? And so the first one is loyalty, because they need, to survive a fight,
Hmm.
you're going to go into battle, and the person that has somebody next to them has a greater chance of surviving that battle than somebody that's going it alone. So they value loyalty. They value their fighting buddy. They call it the wingman.
Hmm.
Um, they also value. I'm looking at my list here. They also value respect, because when somebody goes into battle, they want the enemy to fear them. They want them to respect them, their capabilities, and that kind of thing. Now it's different for somebody. Another person that I use, another metaphor that I use is a logistical type. So now the warrior is the person that goes out and takes the fight to the enemy. The logistical kind of supports that warrior. When you in the army, like in a battle, when you go into battle, you have a set of people that are going to fight, but then you need support people to support
Hmm.
that battle. They need weapons, they need bedding, and they need food and water, and they need all kinds of things to engage in that fight. And so the logistical is kind of like somebody that has that farmer mentality, that is going to provide the raw materials and the necessary items for the warrior to fight that battle.
That makes
And
sense.
so this is my personality type. I'm a logistical type, where I'm very methodical, and so I value things like time. I value integrity. When I'm going to give somebody something to go into battle with, I want it to work for them. I don't want them to come back to me and say, "Hey, this didn't work."
That makes sense
Uh,
being a rocket scientist.
right.
You've got to
uh,
be fairly methodical, I'd imagine, in that line of work.
right. Exactly. Procedures. That's the way I run my business. It's very methodical. When customers come to us, they, what the thing that makes my business different, my rocket business, is that I guarantee shipping. So if you order today, it's going out today. Our whole system here is designed around that process of moving things through as quickly and evenly and as fast as possible, so the customer is satisfied.
So you're using that side of you to
Right.
figure out
Exactly.
how do you deliver on that promise? How do you?
Right. And this, one of the key concepts on personality is people with similar personality type temperament are attracted to each other.
Hmm.
Another way to say that is people with similar values are attracted to each other. So I have customers that have similar values to me. They are that logistical temperament. And so they want things, fast and quick and easy, so that they don't have to think about it. They don't have to fight me for it.
Hmm. That makes sense, and particularly if you're, I guess, if you're selling rockets, then the people that are
Right.
going to be playing with rockets are going to also going to need to have that kind of methodical
Right. Now
mentality as well.
the other temperament that it's part of my customer base is, I call them the strategists. Now, the strategists are kind of like the force multiplier in the Army. They take what limited resources the Army has and they extend them and they use them in the most logical, methodical, systematic way possible. Um, and so they value logic.
Hmm.
In the DISC system, they would be the S's. Um, and that is also the scientist. They are very, trying to get at what nature, the laws of nature, how things work, so that they can use them to the best of their ability, for the Army to succeed.
And how do you, like within your business, and how can anybody else then identify who their customers or their potential customers are and their existing customers, I suppose?
Okay, so the first thing is that if you don't know who your customers are, they're exactly like you.
Hmm.
So when I started my business, I didn't know personality. And so my USP, my unique selling proposition, was resources for rocket scientists. So resources is that logistical term.
Hmm.
So I was already selling to a person that was just like me. So when you're first starting out, learn who you are and what personality temperament you are, because that is your natural selling style. And those are going to be the customers that are naturally drawn to you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually, in hindsight, it's actually a really good thing, because you want to attract somebody that you enjoy doing business with. And if somebody that has the same values that you do, you're going to enjoy it, they're going to enjoy it, and that's good. Now, when I sell to a person that has the warrior temperament, it's a completely different arrangement for me, because those warriors, what they want, what they value is the biggest, baddest weapon they can have. Because if you're going to go into battle, you don't want to go into
Yeah.
a gunfight with a knife. You want to go into a gunfight with a bazooka. So they want the biggest, baddest thing that they can get. And then they just want to blow it up. So customers that have that warrior temperament that come to me, they want the rocket that's going to blow up, and they want it to do something cool. And for me, as the logistical, I'm going crazy, because this is not safe. They're gonna hurt somebody, and they're going to ruin my business, because what they do, in the United States here, we have the government, and they can just slam you down
Mhm.
real quick. They can put any business out of business real easy with laws and regulations. So I have to go to my warrior customers, and I have to try to tone them down just a little bit. And at the same time, still have to, they value fun, and so I got to say, if you're going to have fun, I guarantee you're going to have fun, and people are going to respect you. But let's just do it,
Do it
let's
without
tweak it.
blowing shit
Just,
up. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So then I guess you then use that to tailor the marketing message,
Right,
and
right. So that's
and
what you
you,
want to do.
yeah. And do you have um potentially slightly different for the same product. You may use a different message through different avenues, or different channels, to get those different personality temperaments to supply the
Exactly.
product.
In a perfect world, you would have 4 different websites,
Mm-hmm.
one for each of the personality temperaments. Um, but in my case, that's just too much work. So what I do is I start out, okay, I'm going to sell to the logisticals because that's the one that makes me the most money, because they're like me and they're attracted to me. And here's the other thing is, there's 4 temperaments, but humanity is not distributed evenly in all 4.
Mm-hmm.
There's not 25% of one, 25% of the other, 25% of the third, et cetera, like that. They're concentrated. There's, to fight a battle, you need a lot of warriors, that gives you the advantage. So in humanity, about 38% of the population are the warrior type, the SPs in Myers-Briggs. Another 38%, approximately, nobody knows the exact, but approximately 38% are the logisticals like me. So those 2 temperaments right there are about 76% of the human population.
Mm.
And then the remaining 2, the strategists, and the 4th category I call morale officers. The morale officer is the type of person that wants to give encouragement to warriors, because a warrior without courage is useless. They won't engage in the battle. So you have the morale officers, who are these touchy-feely type people that encourage everybody else to get up and engage in the battle. And them when you see them. They're they're very friendly. They're very feeling type of person. But they are not my customer. They are not attracted to rockets. But in humanity, they make up just a small percentage. It's about 12% of humanity is that touchy-feely type person. And then the strategist makes up another 12%, because you don't need to fight a battle where everybody is a strategist. We have a saying here: too many cooks spoil the pot. So you can't have too many of those. To be successful, you need, it's just a small number, like about 12%. So I forgot the question was.
It's really around, like, how do you cater to, like you said,
Okay.
ideally you'd have 4 websites, right? But
Right.
practically speaking, that's never going to happen, is it?
Right. In practicality, so what you do is you pick who you want, and then you sprinkle in some of the values of the other temperaments that you're going after. So I, sell to the logistical. So my text and my images on our website are very logistical oriented. Do this, step 1, step 2, very process oriented. But then I'll sprinkle in some of the warrior, because that's, they're a big customer base, 38% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get those as customers too. So then I'll sprinkle in, okay, you're going to have a lot of fun, and this is the biggest, baddest rocket available. So go out and use it. And then for the strategist type, they're the logical person that wants to go deep into the laws of nature. So for them, I say, you're going to learn about rocketry and how to improve humanity through the use of this product. Very efficiency, learning laws of nature, things like that. And for the morale officers, I completely ignore them.
Because they're not the target. So,
yeah.
So one of the questions I've seen, I think you answered previously, but it's the human behavior has always fascinated me. Is where does this come from? Like, where do we pick up? Are we born with a particular personality temperament, or is it something that is learned over time? Does it change?
This is the big question. I believe that it is, you are born with it. But at the same time, people learn things.
Mm-hmm.
So, the general consensus from everybody else, and this is where I'm unique and I'm outside the norm, is other people believe that you pick it up from your parents or you pick it up from your environment. That's what, this is the way I was born. This is the way I was, or not born. This is the way my parents raised me.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I do the things I do. Well, I think you're born with it. So it's genetic. And if it's genetic, well, it was handed down from your parents. So you could say you learned it from your parents, but maybe you inherited it from your parents. And the other thing is that if you are born with it, if it's like in your DNA, there should be some clues that you should be able to pick up from other people as to what their personality temperament is. And I've noticed these clues. I can almost look at people and guess their personality temperament. And this is where it gets very politically incorrect. Because now you're basing somebody's behavior on how they look.
Mm-hmm.
And
isn't that what Amazon's pretty much doing anyway, right? With all of their big data,
they're doing it.
Yeah, they're doing it anyway, just in
they're doing it, with data where I can do it just by looking at a person, just reading the genetics. And if you look at research, one of the things that they studied was facial width to height ratio. Somebody that has a wide face, the distance between their ears compared to from the top of the eyebrow to the upper part of their lip, that ratio, those distance relationships. Well, a person with a high facial width, somebody with a wide face, is more likely to be somebody with a logistical temperament versus somebody with a very narrow, tall face is more likely to be of the warrior temperament.
That's interesting. Naively, I probably would have thought the other way around. Isn't that interesting?
Right. And then it gets into body shape as well. They also, the psychologists also study female hip to waist ratio. So a very curvaceous woman is also more likely to be of the warrior temperament versus a woman that is very straight, like a tree trunk. She's more likely to be, what they actually study was the IQ of that person. Person that has a very straight trunk has a higher IQ. And that translates to the person with the strategist personality type. Those people have the higher IQ because they're using the logic center of their brain. So I can, just look at the back of a person and say, hey, they got that straight trunk. There's probably less likely to be of the warrior temperament, more likely to be of the strategist type, somebody that's a very thinking person.
I want to do the test. I'm fascinated. I've done the disc stuff and I've done the Myers-Briggs, and the thing
that's the stuff that I pick up, outside of the tests.
Yeah.
You don't get that in the test, the genetic part, because nobody else believes it. I'm out here alone on my own plank, saying this crazy stuff, but in hindsight, it makes sense.
Yeah, so I say I've done all of the other test things, and I quite like the way you're articulating it into these four kind of. Then more it's articulated better in a naming convention, because I can never remember. I've done Myers-Briggs like 2 or 3 times. Still never remember what the combination letters I have.
And that's why I came up with this. Like I said, it has to be simple. And even disc, they're just metaphors. And in mine, it's just a metaphor. It's just what I've chosen to call them, and it's based on their behavior. Mm-hmm. So we have the warriors, the logisticals, the strategists, and the morale officers. And together we make a human army, and we need each other. And so one personality type is not better than the other. It's just what you're born to do.
It makes sense. Do you find certain buying behaviors that are slightly different between the different types? That, i.e., is one type more likely to be an early adopter, for example?
Right. So the warrior is the early adopter. Again, this goes back to their value of new tools. They want the newest weapon. What's available now that nobody else has? And so they are very impulsive when they buy. Where the logistical person, it's kind of like a farmer. I'm going to be using this year after year and season after season. I want something that's going to last. So they look for quality, something that's going to last a long time and that's not going to be obsolete next fall.
Mm-hmm. That makes
So
sense.
so you do
There's a,
see some of those behaviors.
so there's a bit of, there's I think Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs type thing, and one of those is significance. And it sounds like the warrior is very much
Right.
around it's look at me, I'm going to be the first to have everything. I've got the biggest, the shiniest.
Exactly.
And I'd imagine they're probably quite likely to take other products, things like, I'm going to make an assumption here, and things like loans and credit cards and that kind of stuff, so that they can get the big shiny stuff to show off.
Right. Warriors, I call that, they have like a double nature. They have their battle mode, where they are dead serious. And if they're in battle mode, my advice is just get away from them, because they are very driven and they're going to win. But then, a warrior, think of, caveman days.
Mm-hmm.
Where all the cavemen are sitting around the fire, and tomorrow they're planning a battle against the neighboring tribe. So tomorrow they're going to be very focused. But what are they doing right now around that campfire? They're, if you don't know whether you're going to survive or not tomorrow, what are you going to do today? You're going to have fun.
As much as possible, right?
As much as possible. I'm not going to worry about paying the bills. So, I'm going to have a party, and I'm going to borrow money to have a party. And, and if I survive the battle, I'll worry about that later. And that's kind of the mentality that they have, about spending money.
Do you see any, as people, as we get older, do you see people starting to morph and adopt more of other temperaments and other traits? So like maybe I would imagine there's kind of there's quite a lot of warrior young males who maybe calm down down a bit as they get older. I'm speaking a bit from experience here. Like I've become more sensible as the years have gone on.
Well, yes and no. One thing is, as you become more skilled as a warrior, you gravitate towards those things that help you get the job done fast and quick. So those things, so you kind of become a little bit more conservative, but not much. You still have that warrior mentality, but you know what works because you have experience behind you. Experience is a big teacher. And psychologists say that over time, people become more logistical likes, more like the logistical person, but in reality, they will still act like a warrior, and that's the way you should treat them. They're always going to be looking out for that new shiny object, so you can present it to them.
So has anyone listening to this who maybe running a business or a marketing team or whatever, what's the kind of the top tips of how to leverage personality temperaments?
So the first thing is to make that connection that personality type or temperament is analogous to values. So it's kind of like they're two sides of the same coin. So now you want to look at what are the values of each of the temperaments and try to categorize those values so that you can market to them. Those are the motivators that that people buy things with. Being a logistical, I'm going to look for quality. So those are the values that I look for. When I say values, there's values come in 4 categories, and I call them the 4 P's, and try to keep them simple again. The first value is people. You value people more than other people. You value your family more than you value my family. Then the second category is possessions. You value your stuff more than you value my stuff. If somebody, when you get a brand new car, you clean your car, but your neighbor gets a brand new car, you're not cleaning his car, right? Because your possessions are more valuable to you than his. The third category is your passions. This is a kind of a broad category, but includes things like your hobbies, your religion, your sports teams. You're passionate about your football club versus the one that's across town. So that's the third P. And then the fourth P is your principles, your guiding principles. And so when I'm talking about values, I'm talking about these guiding principles, these principles that you follow, that you believe lead to success. So for me, it's logistics, it's procedures. If I follow the procedures, it leads to success. So as a marketer, we want to know what those values are. The other big aha moment that I had is that values also trigger emotions. In sales, we say people buy with emotions. Well, how do we trigger those emotions? Well, I said values are connected to emotions. So to trigger emotion, you interact with somebody's values. So like say if I wanted to trigger anger in somebody. So first you have to find out what do they value, and then what triggers anger is anything that attacks that value. So I'll take, so say you have a child. You value your child because it's one of the P's, it's a person. Now, if somebody attacks that child, what's your first reaction? You're going to get mad.
You're going to react, aren't you?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So anger is triggered when something that you value is attacked. Now, fear is another great emotion. Now, fear is triggered when something that you value is threatened. So say your child gets sick, and it's a major illness. What's your emotion? It's fear. You fear that you might lose your child. So fear is triggered when something you value is threatened to be taken away. So when it's you go from fear to anger instantly, and the trigger is when the threat becomes an attack. So when you want to trigger a customer to take action, you want to trigger an emotion. And 2 good emotions are fear or anger. But anger, you have to be very careful with anger in that the anger is not directed at you.
Yeah,
but it's directed
quite quickly
at somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So you want to say, it's the government that's attacking you. So now their anger is focused on the government and not you as the salesperson.
So it's building the common enemy.
Right.
Thing,
Exactly.
So we're all on the same team. These are the bad guys, and we can help solve your problem.
And that's a great way to build rapport, right? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So we have the same enemy, the government. So now, that brings us really close together. And so it's a different way of building rapport that salesmen haven't been trained at. In a typical way of building rapport, you ask questions about the person. And what do you ask about? Well, you ask about people, you ask about their possessions, you ask about their passions. How's your football team doing? How's that new car you got running? How's your family doing? Those are the ways we're taught to build rapport.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the opposite way. What if I just show to you that I have the same enemy that you have? So now the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So instead of asking a person questions, you can display ahead of time that you have the same enemy that they have. And that's going to build instant rapport a lot faster than sitting around peppering somebody with question after question about their pets and their their cat and their dog.
And I suppose there's probably the different kind of temperaments engage in different types of conversation. Like some will engage in a bit more small talk, and others just going to cut to the chase and say, what's the offer?
Yeah. The logisticals like me are more direct because we value time.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to waste my time doing small talk. Now, somebody with the morale officer temperament, they're more about the other person's feelings. And so they want to get close. How are you really doing today? Are you just saying that, or do you really mean it? That's the way that they're going to come across. So their temperament, I like to think of it as it precedes a person into the room. So you can tell a person's temperament long before you actually even talk to a person. It's kind of like you can hear a person walking down the hall before they even come into your room.
Mm-hmm.
So temperament enters the room before the person enters the room. So you can actually prepare for the person just by, if you can figure out what temperament they are.
And do people digest the message better in different formats? And I'm thinking kind of, video versus type versus whatever, other still image, that kind of stuff. Is there different mediums that resonate better with different temperaments?
I wouldn't say it's that different.
Right.
The one exception might be the strategist and the morale officer. They have, in Myers-Briggs, they have the intuition trait. And for them, they can pick up a lot of information by reading. So, the written word for them is a little bit more conveying of information. But for everybody else, the five senses are going to work no matter what.
Interesting. Because I've always wondered whether, sometimes there's different preferences for learning, and whether that kind of translates into the marketing space or not.
Again, this goes back to intuition versus sensing. The Myers-Briggs, and when people take a Myers-Briggs test, the problem with it is they always come back as a person with intuition, because intuition is kind of, they view it as a sixth sense. Mm-hmm. And why have five senses when you could have six? It's kind of like being a superhero. You got an extra power. But I'm an engineer. So as an engineer, I'm always looking at an object and I'm saying, what's the good points and what's the bad points about it? So what's the good points about the sensing? Sensing is you're taking in information through your five senses: taste, smell, touch, hearing, and sight. Where intuition is you're taking in information in a different way. It's kind of like magnetism. You can't sense magnetism, but you can infer that it's there by watching how it interacts with a compass needle or something like that. Or so that's the strategist person. They're looking at the laws of physics and how things are interacting. Where the morale officer, they take in information kind of like colors. Like the color red, it means something. It's warm and it's hot. or the color blue is cold. So they're gathering extra information in that way. So that's the good part of it. But what's the bad part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find that everybody has intuition, but the person with the intuition trait are unable to turn it off like a light switch. So they don't understand what everybody else is talking. So 76% of the world are warriors and logisticals, which are the sensing people.
Mm-hmm.
So the 24%, the morale officers and the strategists, they don't understand why us sensors, maybe like sex so much. Because when in that case, it's all about the five senses.
Yeah.
What's going, and since I'm not the intuitive type, I have no idea what's going through their mind when they're having sex. Because, like the morale officer, they might be thinking about, is this person having a good time? Instead of sitting around just enjoying the senses part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't turn it off. It's always on. And so if you were to take a test, a good question is, do you enjoy, what do you enjoy most about intercourse? And if it's about the five senses, you're a sensor. And if it's about something else, about emotions or, creating a future, you might be the intuition person.
And do you see any bias between the sexes, between the personality types? You get more men in one category and more females in another?
This is where it's biased is in the thinking versus feeling trait.
Mm-hmm.
Men are about 60% thinkers, so that leaves 40% as feelers, and it's the reverse in females. Females, about 60% are feelers, 40% are the thinkers. So it's a small bias, but it's definitely there. There's more women that are feelers than are thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
That have that thinking trait, not
Yeah, that
trait.
makes sense. And you touched on like the two kind of, I guess, negative emotions that you can, fear and stuff and that gets
Right.
you a lot for selling. Are there any really powerful positive emotions that you could tap into?
Happiness is a positive emotion. There's 10 emotions. I'll see if I can remember them. There's happiness or joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, guilt, disgust, embarrassment, surprise, and I always forget the 10th one. But those are emotions that you can actually see on a person's face. You can see when a person's sad. You can see when they're disgusted, like when they see a pile of dog poop sitting on the ground. That triggers disgust. But happiness is triggered. Again, it always goes back to values. So happiness is triggered when something that you value is promoted or honored. So like, this is why politicians kiss babies, because they're honoring the parent by valuing the thing that they value. You got the cutest little kid, and that makes the parents feel good. Right? You instantly trigger happiness.
And we all infer that they then value all of us at the same time because they value this other being,
Right.
I suppose, right?
Exactly. Embarrassment is a powerful trigger as well. Embarrassment causes people to take instant action, but you have to plan it very far ahead of time. Like if you have, feet that stink, you're going to run out and get a product that causes, to hide that odor. So embarrassment is triggered when something you value has an odor.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're in an elevator and you let out a something odorous. What is your
Fart in the
what?
lift, as we call it? Yeah.
And that's something that you value has an odor you feel embarrassed about, and you have to turn and get away from that situation as fast as possible. That's why embarrassment is a quick acting trigger. And the other thing about embarrassment is it lasts forever. You know, you always remember the time you were in the elevator.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So it's, you know, I wrote that book, you know, Emotional Copywriting Revealed, and, you know, embarrassment is one of those power motivators for causing action.
How'd you trigger that through copy?
Well, again, you want to say, you know, you have something that you value. Say you own a car, but you don't like the way your car looks. So now our product is going to magically transform that thing of embarrassment into something that you are proud to show off. So that's kind of the formula of, you know, and it's often used in the weight loss industry. You know, the before and the after. You're embarrassed about the before picture, but you're proud to show off the after.
That makes sense.
Right.
Where can we get a list of all of this stuff? Where can we find out more? Because I think it's really, really interesting, and I bet loads of people are listening to this thinking, I would fancy checking that out.
I wrote a book. This is when I discovered this stuff. It was kind of like an inspiration. And I said, I got to write this down on paper, because if I don't, and if I get hit by a truck, this is going to be lost to humanity. So I wrote it really quick. And it's my book, you know, Selling by Personality Type. So don't expect a Pulitzer Prize winning book. You know, it's something I wrote really quick because I had to get it down on paper, because I was afraid. You know, here's that fear again. It was triggered because I was afraid that it might be taken away from humanity. So I wrote it down fast. But it's pretty long. You'll find it on Amazon. It's a Kindle book. It's not in print form yet. Eventually, you know, when I get more time, I'll rewrite it and make it more authorish.
Sometimes it has to be overly polished. It's the message that's important, right?
Right. And so in the book, I go through the 4 temperaments and then what each one values. And, you know, and this is where it took a lot of research, because I had to look at people and what they had in common. You know, so like the warriors, I had to, I look for what emotions are triggered, because if you can see what emotions are triggered, you can always go back to what they value. So I look at, where do they get mad? You know, what is the anger? And then what caused that? You know, what was attacked to cause that anger? And so what that was attacked was a value. And so when you find enough things that are common, then it made the cut, and then it's in the book. So like for warriors, you know, impactfulness, loyalty, there's a lot of them, courage and confidence. You know, warriors are constantly talking about, you know, I have to have the confidence to do this thing. So if it keeps coming up over and over again, you know, it made the cut, and it's in the book. You know, the warriors, because they make such a large percent of the population, I have the most values written for them. And then the morale officers and the strategists, because they're such a smaller part of the population, it's harder to find out what they value. So their list is a little bit shorter. So the list can grow. It's all I've done so far. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a work in progress. Nice. Always learning, just like everybody else.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the great thing with all of these things. I think we are learning more every year, right? We're starting to understand humans more as we progress and develop and spend more time analyzing the things that make us tick.
Yes, I agree.
I have, before we go and let everyone know where they can track you down as well. Quick fire round for you. some interesting questions. I'm always
Okay.
intrigued to get these because they're a consistent set of questions that everyone gets to answer now. I half know the answer to this one already, but do you have a morning routine? And if you
Because
do, what does it look like?
because I'm a logistical,
Yeah, of course you do.
I do have a routine. I get up early, I exercise, um, and then I, shower, go to work. I get to work at the same time every morning. I work all day. I leave the office at the same time every day. Part of that is because of my guarantee to my customers that if you order today, it'll go out today. So I physically take all the packages and take them to the post office to get them out the door. And I go to
That's
this,
white glove service. That.
right. you know, it's it's something that I've always done. In order for me to guarantee it, I know I have to physically know that it's been done. So
Mhm.
I have to do it myself, unfortunately.
How long have you had that routine? Forever, or?
Oh, pretty much forever. I've only started working out in the mornings probably about in 2015. At that time, I turned 50 years old, and when you turn 50, the doctors say, "Okay, go ahead and have a colonoscopy." And so during that colonoscopy, they found some polyps, and they said, "Well, you better change your lifestyle. Or you're going to die." And
Gee,
that was a big motivator. Fear.
there's your fear again. Yeah.
Right. Something that you value may be taken away. So yeah, I changed my routine, and it shows. It's physically I feel great. I'm turning 55 here. I feel better now than I did when I was 40.
That's good.
I have more energy, and yeah, that I'm lighter in weight. I'm 30 pounds lighter, so
Wow.
I'm doing good.
Yeah, that's well done. That's a pretty
Fear is
big
a great
change.
motivator.
Yeah, isn't it? The next question is 3 books that you'd recommend and why.
Um, I read recently a book by Richard Bandler. He is the father of neuro linguistic programming.
Hmm.
He wrote a book called Thinking for Change. It's a great book on how to change those phobias that you have, the things that are preventing you from enjoying life to the fullest. So that's a great book. Another good book that I read in the past, where I kind of got my start in around 2011, I read a book called um, Please Understand Me by David Kersey. And it broke the Myers-Briggs into the 4 temperaments.
Hmm.
And that's its biggest, because in Myers-Briggs, there's 16 personality types, and
That's
16
what I
is
mean. I
just
can never remember which one I
you
came out
you
as.
can't remember. It's too many. But he's a strategist, so he logically broke it down into the 4 temperaments. And then he started walking through those temperaments. And it was from that book that I recognized that people with the same temperament have similar values. So that's a good book for there. Um, Another good book, and this is a business book that I just read last week, um, and it's Keith Cunningham, and he wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid. And this is a book for business owners. He walks you through the 4 categories of business owners. When you first start a business, you're the artist.
Hmm.
And as the artist, you want to create, because you didn't like your corporate job. You wanted to have a way to express yourself, and that's through your art. And I had this same thing, when I was working for the big rocket company in Cape Canaveral launching the big rockets, I wanted to have fun and I wanted to create. And then the second stage that the entrepreneur goes through is the person that works the business. This is I got to get the orders out. I got to get them to the post office. This is where you're the operator.
Hmm.
And then the third stage is you become the owner, and you start hiring people to do those tasks for you. And then the fourth stage is the investor. And then what does it take to be the investor? What questions you have to look at. And what he does in his book, The Road Less Stupid, is to give you thousands of questions that you need to be asking about your business to get it to move to that next level to where it's sustainable, and provides a consistent income for you, no matter whether you're running it or not, whether you're the CEO or you hired a CEO to run it for you.
Moving to that step 3 is always the hardest. From everyone I ever speak to, moving to step 3
Right.
seems to be the most difficult.
Right. I'm in step
Letting go
3.
of the
I've been in
maybe.
step 3, but I want to get to step 4.
Yeah, that's the way to be. 3 people that you either follow or listen to that I should check out.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts, a lot of good business podcasts. Yours is a great one.
Thank you.
Um, I think I'll defer that one because the other part of getting old is your memory starts going too.
Yeah, I suffer with that these days. Do you know when I was younger, I used to have almost photographic memory. It doesn't seem to work quite so well anymore.
Right.
3 that I think you probably partly answered this already, but 3 good habits or disciplines that you've adopted that have made a big difference to your life.
Again, this is going to go back to your personality type, and I caveat saying this is for the person with a logistical temperament. If you were to choose a coach that has the same temperament that you do. So if you are a logistical, get a coach that's also logistical, because those values are going to be similar. So that would be, I got a coach, that was one of the disciplines that I would say that people should adopt. Get a coach to help you through, somebody to watch your back, to see those blind spots that you're not seeing. I'd also say, diet and exercise. And this I learned the hard way. It's more exercise than diet, but the diet has to be there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one is, do what you love and do. Do what you love to do.
Yeah.
Enjoy. Enjoy life as you go along. I don't go to work in the morning. I go to have fun.
You got to play with rockets.
Right.
But 2 to go. The 3 tools or systems, apps, softwares, whatever that you can't live without now.
I'm an engineer, so this is going to be the engineer one. I use a CAD program to design my rockets, and it's called Fusion 360. It's changed the way I design rockets. Before it was like I was the artist just trying to sculpt the rocket. Now I sculpt everything in the computer, and it saves so much time, and the rockets come out so much better. The Google Drive is a very great app.
That comes up quite often, yeah.
Right. It's simple. It's cloud based. It's free. Here in my office, we're on Mac computers, so it's harder to find good apps.
Mm-hmm.
But we switched to an app called MoneyWorks for the accounting in our business. It tracks inventory and it tracks the expenses, and it's Mac based. So, and it's also kind of open source where you can get at the data. Other programmers can write applications to get at it. And so we switched to that because our previous program was very, closed, where other outside developers couldn't get access to the data to write, the software we needed to analyze that data.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Last question. If you could spend 1 hour with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
Maybe Warner von Braun, who is the pioneer of the American space program. He was also the pioneer of the German space program during World War II. And also Einstein. I've been reading more and more about Einstein and the kind of creative genius that he was. I'm reading a book right now called Think Like a Rocket Scientist. And it kind of gravitated towards me because I was a rocket scientist.
Yeah, I was going to say,
But
it
but
does. It
it's
does
a book
match.
about philosophy, and he talks a lot about um, Einstein. And Einstein was a strategist temperament, but he also was the perceiving type. So the perceiver person is the person that's, when he sees that shiny object, he gravitates towards it. And I'm not. I'm a judging person. And so seeing how Einstein created some of his theories is interesting.
Yeah, he was an
It's
interesting
a diff.
character. I mean, I'm no Einstein expert for sure, but he
Yeah,
fascinates me in his logical yet
playfulness.
kind of spiritual way. In the same,
Right.
right? Doesn't seem like the traditional science approach
Yes.
in many ways, and that's why I think he's quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, where can people find you, Tim?
Um, I would say my website. I'm not big on social media. The reason is that, like LinkedIn, everybody says when you get on LinkedIn, all of a sudden you get just inundated with requests for people to sell you stuff. And because I value time so much, I don't have time for that. So I stick to just basically my website and email. So on my website, customersecrets.com, you'll find a form where you can email me. I can give you my email address as well. My email is tvm, that's Tim Van Milligan, at customersecrets.com.
Lovely. Well, it's been really good, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right. Well, thank you,
Lovely. Cheers,
David.
Tim. Thank you.
All right.